Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we are doing a response to yesterday's broadcast. Yesterday's broadcast, or yesterday's episode, was The Cities, the Byways, and In the Night by Bob Neumann, episode 10 of The War We Fight. This was actually two different articles which are being combined into one. It ran over an hour. My comments at the back side of that would have run nearly 2 hours. Therefore, I'm going to make my response and talk about a lot of stuff today in this episode. But before I begin, as usual, to listen to that episode on This and That, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. Because this is by Bob Neumann, it will be featured on our blog page. The blog page has read more links. Click on them. They'll take you to the article, which has the podcast, which opens in a separate tab, so you can listen while you look. So, in yesterday's episode, Bob talked about in the night historical events as he witnessed them, women being raped and villagers saying nothing. Allah Akbar, which is, it's actually Allahu Akbar, and it means God is the greatest. It's Muslim. You hear it a lot when you're listening to Islamic insurgents dealing with those they don't like. So, the hut, I said think like the Sudan, or you might even think like the Middle East. Did you know that Iran is actually on the African continent? Yeah, go pull up a world map. Blew me away. So is Egypt. They're just up at the top, like next door to anything else in the Middle East, like Israel, the land saddle that's kind of bridging, almost bridging the African continent with the Mediterranean going into the European continent. So there's that. He talks about churches being shot up. He talks about a person being wheeled down the boulevard, and people were throwing insults at the person. They got a tire put on them. The tire got lit. It was a slow way to die, he says. He talks about tanks rolling on the boulevard, and the king in the vision says, "Oh, but this was what was before. Haven't you understood? Precious in my sight are the death of my saints." In the book of Revelation, who comes out of the tribulation but the saints, saints, or sanctified ones, the ones that have been through the crucible. Now, I'm redoing my back end to that broadcast today. Several years ago, I went back to an old church I had been a member of for quite a few years. It was then called Grace Church of Kendall. Don't know what it's called now. Grace Church had started out with a small sanctuary, and when it got to be too many services, too much, they broke ground on a very large area and built a very big sanctuary with an upper and lower deck. This meant that the outside area, the foyer, had stairs that went up to the upper deck, but also went up to offices and classrooms. So what we had added was a multi-purpose facility. The little sanctuary became a place for children's church and multi-purpose for the young people. Now, I went to that church and was let in early because it was very hot outside. This was the summer, 99, 2000, something like that. And I sat in the now empty but the large master auditorium sanctuary, and I was in worship. I was just sitting before the Lord. Suddenly, I'm in the middle of service. It's a regular service. The choir's on deck on the platform, pianists, drums, pastors there. There are people sitting up on the platform, and the church area is full. It's packed on the main floor and presumably up in the balcony. We're in the middle of a worship service. We're having church. When suddenly I see black-clad, firearms carrying, and I don't mean little guns, I mean like your basic AK-47 type automatic military. And they come down the rather wide center aisle and the narrower side aisles. They demand that the church cease activity, and when the church is too slow to do so, they opened fire on the platform. I watched as people I knew from the choir fell. It's like you point and they drop. Yes, I'm watching them twitch, jerk as they're being hit with bullets, and then drop. Nobody's alive. I can even hear the gunfire. The platform has to one side of it the pastor's office, and to the other side the choir room. How do I know this? I was in the choir, so I know about the back area. And then there is a little hallway so the choir can come out of the choir room and come up on the stage, and the pastor can come out of the pastor's office into the hallway and come up onto the stage. Kind of like a green room for guests as well, I suppose. Either way, they would have gotten into that area too, because I hear shooting back there too. In fact, I hear a lot of shooting all around me. They then open fire on the entire audience of the sanctuary. The people just jump up and are like, "Hey, what are you doing? What the heck?" I mean, we're not very polite. F-bombs were dropping. It was shock and awe. Yes. And the next thing I know, it's over. They're walking out. As quickly as they come in, they leave. All right, now, you have to understand, I'm in the middle of this, and it dawns on me that I'm in a vision only because I'm alive. It was that real. So I start looking around, and I now see the sprawled, riddled people all over the main, and I look up because I realized, they were upstairs too, and sure enough, I'm seeing bodies that kind of like half hang, dangling, whatever, they're all dead, blood dripping everywhere. It's a scene of gore. I nut up the courage and walk down the main aisle because I can also see that the sanctuary is empty. That's the only thing that gives me the ability to go through the vision, is that it's not actually happened yet. So I go out the double doors to the foyer, and sure enough, at the front desk where the merch is, there's someone who was kind of pulled over the top of it was a wide desk, so they were kind of pulled over like a concierge desk at a hotel. So it was wide, and they were kind of pulled over, and when I moved around, there was a body on the floor behind. I then turned and looked up, because that's where the balcony area was, to access the upper deck and anything upstairs. Sure enough, there were people who had been caught out in the hallways, and they were now on the ground, half hanging off the balcony, whatever. So I didn't go into the offices because in real time, I had no business going into the offices. I could walk around the church proper, but I could not go into any of the regular rooms. I'm a visitor and I'm alone, and it's just the maintenance person who let me in because it was hot. And it was several hours before services. All right. I walked towards, when they built this facility, they built it with a causeway that was mated to the front doors, which were then made into an internal door set to what was the original sanctuary, which was now the children's church, meaning that there's a stairwell that goes up in that area, and there were dead bodies on the stairwell. I literally told the Lord I could not go through the doors to the children's church. I knew what I was going to find. The little ones dead. There was no church anymore. They had been obliterated. That was number one. Church number two. Sometime later, I went to some place up in Lauderdale, I think. I want to say Fort Lauderdale, thereabout, in Broward County. And I was there for like an evening performance, some sort of a concert. It was a dance, or it was a Christian event. And so they had their speakers they had the large speakers, and they were banging, and it was fun. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying myself. And all of a sudden, I see the same crew of black. And they came in, because this is a church. So they came into the church. They came down that center aisle that was in this church, much smaller church. And they came down side aisles. and they challenged the pastor, who challenged them back, and they sprayed that congregation. Nobody survived. Here where I live, there is a small community church which has changed hands a few times. Fountains of Life is what's running it now. It used to be called Point of Grace. Before that, it used to be called Lake Forest Baptist. I was in that church one day while it was Point of Grace on a Sunday, and I went into vision, and in walks BSO, Broward Sheriff, with something in hand, walks up to the front, stops the service, turns around, and starts reading off this is a new mandate. This is a cease and desist order. The church service is deemed an unlawful public gathering. They cannot have these public gatherings. This is an unlawful gathering. Not like it was, you have too many people in here, this is a fire hazard. No, there weren't that many people in the building. This is a small church, and by the time I was in that church, it was kind of just limping along. And they were challenged, and sure enough, threats were made to try and open fire. And in this vision, somehow I managed to wrest, W-R-E-S-T, rest, the church's attention to me, and to say, folks, if you don't comply with this, because at this point, the same black-clad thugs with guns were already in the sanctuary. These guys are going to shoot you dead. They've done this already in several churches. I've seen this in visions. We need to just stop. We need to leave peaceably. And I mean, I'm getting resistance, but eventually I got them to just calm down. In fact, the BSO, I think, in the vision congratulated me for saving lives, or I don't know. All I know is that as they were leaving, the leadership is like, well, how are we going to keep in touch with the people? And they're shooting phone numbers back and forth, and they're just leaving. This was at a time when your basic cell phone was more or less the flip phone, and smartphones were just starting to catch on. So you had a BlackBerry, and I had one, so you could take notes. See, that was your smartphone attachment to your flip phone, which just called numbers. Right. You didn't have Messenger or MSS on your cell phone, not on these flip phones. No, it was just for making phone calls. Right. Now, that was one set of images. Another set of images. Bob talks about a guy in a vehicle, a cart, a truck, something. He's going down the boulevard. This would have been 1998, 1999, when I was down at the city of Miami going to get my bachelor's degree. On my way into my classes one morning, as I am driving down the main drag headed towards the class, which would be a church next to a jail, next to not far from the hockey rink, the big pink, flamingo pink hockey rink stadium. Those of you that are 63 years of age might remember that. Now, I was driving, and I was suddenly in vision. I'm not in my van. I am now in a kind of a plexiglass encased back of a truck in manacles, and there are others with me. We're kind of like sitting on some form of seating, like a bench seating. The streets were lined with people screaming, shouting, and throwing stuff at the vehicle, at us in the vehicle. We were going to be put to death or something. Let's just put it this way. If I wasn't going to die physically, my little emotional self was going to be hurt, because all the bad things the people were saying. Oh, I have seen in vision in 2014, 15, 16, when POTUS was POTUS the first time, I was a school crossing guard, and I had to be at post for like 6:45 in the morning, something like that. And that gave me plenty of time to just do nothing, because I didn't start having kids coming in until like 7:45, nearly 8 o'clock. I wasn't all that far away from the school. So as I'm standing my post, I start to go into vision, and I watch as these buses, and I could tell they're ex-cheese buses, the cheddar cheese orange buses that your school kids ride to. Yeah, cheese buses, that's what they call them. So they were ex-school buses, but they weren't yellow or white or orange. No, they were a sort of a poop brown, Sam Brown. They had a black logo on them. I'm not sure what that logo was, but I know it was official, like as in government official. The park across the street was like a dog park, and it had some sort of a fencing or whatever. It had some trees. In this instance, there was no fencing. There were no trees. Now, in later time, the many trees got pulled or something, and it was a completely different place. But this was now just green, no fence, just green. Row upon row of people kneeling, hands behind backs, with zip ties, holding their hands behind their backs, kneeling. Meanwhile, the buses are also going down the boulevard. Men in dark clothing are stepping out, and actually they're just doing a collection because folks are coming out of their house. We're talking people, populous people, not goon squads breaking into houses and pulling people out. No. This is the residences of the houses are escorting out of the homes people, as in family members, who are seized, zip-tied, and either board the bus, or are being dragged across to the park. One after another, lines of buses just start showing up at that park. People are got up on their feet roughly, boarded up on the bus, and it just kept going. What got me was that the residences were turning their family members over to whatever this is. Now, fast forward to Immigration Control Enforcement. That's what ICE stands for. Right now, in a bid to keep a campaign promise, Mr. POTUS has beefed up in the billions, $100-something billion, biggest influx of I don't know ever. Of course, a lot of this is probably going to a new adjunct to the wall to like wall us off completely, like the Great Wall of America between North and South America. I don't know. Maybe it will be the Great Wall of America all the way around. Maybe there'll be ramparts to keep the water out. I don't know. Guarantee you a lot of people at ground level are going to lose their view. Still, okay. The idea of embracing the concept that if there are people who are emigrating over here and they're engaging in criminal behavior here, they're committing crimes. Normally you lock them up. Well, in this case, maybe they'll not get locked up in our jails, but they'll just get deported. Problem is, well, they are working with law enforcement. Key West didn't go for it, though. But then that's the Conch Republic, okay? They're kind of rebellious all in their own right. Fine. You bet your bottom dollar with Hialeah, Dade, and Broward. They'll be cooperating. They know better. Because our governor here in Florida wants this, built the cap for this, is gung-ho for dollars on this. And for now, American citizens don't really have to get involved. They can just state that they're American citizens, not say anything more, don't have to really address immigration because they're not the target until the quotas drop. Because after a while, the quotas will drop. They will have flushed out all the systems in all certain places. Then they will start the door knocks. And you bet your bottom dollar they will have a carte blanche warrant demanding that you open your door because they're going to search your premises to see if you are harboring illegal aliens. Then they will drag your family members that are illegal aliens out, board them, and deport them. Or I don't know what they'll do to them. Somewhere on the news I heard that a group of people, one of which was from Sudan, the whole group is going to the Sudanese area where there's a massive war going. I mean, hello? All right, Pretty soon it's going to be, well, we need to do something else. Because you see, what's in power right now has opened the door. Something that calls itself the Christian nationalism, evangelical Christian nationalism, taking America back for Jesus, Seven Hills mandate business. They're serious, and they're now empowered. That's what MAGA, Make America Great Again, also stands for Make America Gods Again, as in God's, apostrophe God's, to be God's nation again. Right. That's their agenda. But they're also very pro-white and very homophobic. If you are trending LGBTQ, you ought to be taken out back and shot. Go look on YouTube. Go look on TikTok. Somebody it was aired out by trans people that this guy is standing at the pulpit and he's saying this, and he is in government, like in the local government. But that's what he's preaching, literally. So they're going to be in the target zone. But pretty soon it's going to become, are you a Democrat? You're anti-MAGA? You won't become MAGA? You will not join our movement? But we are the might makes right. And I will also give you the whiting of America, because that's also what's going on. The blacks are about to get this, their civil liberties violated worse than they ever thought. Because after they go after the illegals, they're going to go after ethnic cleansing. Anything that isn't them, they want out. So now, here's the thing. Another thing that I'm going to talk about this right now that is even more terrifying than the prospects of what I just said. Operant conditioning. It's a very fancy doodle word for push it till the masses get comfortable with it. Push it a little more till the masses get comfortable with it. By degrees, by degrees, by degrees. You're going to have to deal with this because it's in effect sort of solving an issue. Unwanted, undocumented people who are coming in and doing things they shouldn't be doing and tying up our legal system. Fast track them, catch them, realize that they have done something, and just press the charges. Here's the evidence. Da-da-da. They're caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Deportation. Sentence is incarcerated, commuted to deportation. That's the idea. Thing is, they're not going through the courts, really. They're doing raids. They're doing raids everywhere. Everywhere and anywhere. They're looking for these people. Many of them are not criminals, but they're going to be told to the American public, well, those people were criminals too. Their crime was that they snuck in here, set up to try and earn enough scratch to try and pay for green cards, work visa permits, etc., etc. Why? Because here you can't actually get in anymore. We don't really want immigration because our care of our own people is so corrupt in this nation that we have actually destroyed our infrastructure system. What did they just do to Medicaid? Goodness only knows. Oh, and the no taxes on tips and overtime will only be for 1 year. Go read your fine print. So this tax season coming up, you won't be taxed. The next tax season you will. Enjoy your refund while you get it. They're also going to eventually want to gut Medicare and Social Security because POTUS said he wouldn't touch Medicaid, and he did. The powers that are actually behind all this rhetoric and all these people aren't Christian. They serve the serpent. They're the dragon's people. But they're riding the backs of tear seed, those who do not know the Lamb, and the Lamb does not acknowledge knowing them. They're the false. Unfortunately, in this grind are many, many sincere Christians that are being twisted through disinformation, misinformation, and a lack of an ability to do critical thinking. No Child Left Behind has purposefully dumbed down the intellectual capacities of a thinking America. We don't think anymore. And we are bombarded with fluff shows and lifestyle and sexcapades and you name it. It's all over the TV and the internet. Just go look on Facebook. YouTube is worse. Operant conditioning is where eventually you get comfortable and you explain it away to yourself so that when the next round happens, sooner or later they catch up with you. And they finally come to something you don't like, and you have to make a compromise or hammer drop. They're going to drop the boom on you. It ain't going to be pretty. You are going to feel sick inside as you compromise again and again and again. Those that don't compromise will find themselves in the grind. When this all started, this new election, around about Passover, just after Passover, I had a moment in the spirit where I felt like I was listening to metal grinding on metal, the clash of arms, shield upon shield and sword upon sword. The problem is ideologies, has always been ideologies, will always be ideologies. The one true and living God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses has one ideology, a set of them. It's in the book. Go read it. Man has another set. In one of his posts, Bob Teotihuacan bemoaned humanism and what it did to this nation. The problem is humanism had always been in the background. Bob didn't go back far enough. Go back to the Enlightenment. That was the beginning of humanism. The philosophies. I did some online courses in philosophy. I have little tiny free certificates in philosophy. I got one from Edinburgh. Don't you love it? Thinking about how to think about things rightly. That was their idea of what philosophy does for you. Philosophers question everything. So my philosophy courses taught my thinking to question everything, to examine and interrogate my life. That doesn't help you trust in the Lord your God. Trust me. But there it is. I've had visions where I watched tanks rolling down the boulevard, where we were being shelled. I mentioned it in an earlier episode in The War We Fight, where on the National Day of Prayer, either 98 or 99, I walked outside the campus area of the church, looked up and saw these great big gray, looked like suppositories flying overhead. One of my teachers was a hip pocket colonel, lieutenant colonel. And when I described to him what he saw, he got real quiet and real upset. And he proceeded to explain to me that we had been shelled in the vision. He was one who saw, who understood dreams and visions. Bob talks about tanks and people in various uniforms with various languages. People have talked about the Chinese invading the West Coast, like California and such. I've talked about the concept that if we went to war with Russia, really did go to war with Russia, or we let Russia just do whatever she wants over there, they can get across to Alaska. And all they have to do is carve an avenue through Canada to get to the lower 48. As in, do you think the Canadians are going to stop them? No, they're going to make a way for this. Either that or Russia's just going to take over Canada and take over all of North America. Now, if they don't do that, and the Canadians put a stop to them, which they might, because they might get help from Britain, they might get help from France, they might also take over the northern half of our country, with Mexico taking the southern half, with the wheat belt states in the middle at war to keep insurgents out from both sides. But yes, I have seen tanks and soldiers rolling down the boulevard, the buses to bus people out. The thing is, the hit that I kept getting was these were religious. This was political, religio-political persecution. And up until now, with this administration, it escaped me how I would be seeing this unless it was like the book of the Revelation and this was the beast regime. I'm going to say it again. America If you wondered how the beast in the 13th chapter of Revelation was able to pull off what he was doing, this is how. Operant conditioning. The internet and the TV networks, etc., have so muddied the waters of our information. And as soon as POTUS came in, he got rid of international press, the API, Associated Press International. They're not allowed to do any filming in the White House. Nothing. If a journalist gets out of line, he's bounced. Something went viral with POTUS at the speaking desk, and he's talking about ending birthright citizenship, which is an amendment. And this guy suddenly challenges him and says, well, will you be self-deporting since you are the child of immigrants? And you have this pause. The president just looks at the guy like, I can't believe you just said this to me. And blows a cork, sort of, and is like, how dare you? That's preposterous, or whatever. And has the man bounced from the press corps. And we voted him in. And his line was, Christians, vote me in. You'll never have to vote again. What Christians? To those who are actually Jesus Christ people, I'm going to put to you, what Christians? What kind of Christians are we talking about? If you're faithful to the Lamb and he starts telling you that he doesn't want you a part of this, what are you going to do? When the tanks are rolling and it's your turn to face the music, when you're not allowed to be in your home. And here's another thing, homeless. The most at-risk people group right now in the United States is not going to be so much the illegal aliens. It's going to turn out to be the homeless. Watch the streets because they beg. Watch the streets. When you start seeing less homeless, realize the cleanup crews are out there. But pretty soon, people who cannot stomach what's being foisted upon them and go, no, I can't get on board with this, are going to find themselves jobless and homeless. And then the cleanup crews will come and take them. If you're harboring these people, you're an enemy of the state. Do you get it? This is what would give you tanks rolling on the boulevard. And if we wreck our economy any further, Bob Newman's The Killing of the Bull was the demise of this country's economy and possible national sovereignty. And then, because we couldn't pay our debts and we lost our credit and we couldn't borrow and we couldn't bring enough capital together to clear to zero and couldn't pay our bills, when that happens, and it will happen, we're past the tipping point. We're way past the tipping point. How we're still going is a mercy of God. Well, that mercy has ended. As of the bill that was just passed in the White House, I had a word. I've put it on broadcast. I won't repeat it again. It would be in the War We Fight series on talking about this and that.wordpress.com. Look in the podcast series for one of the episodes of The War We Fight. I talk about this. When we can no longer pay our debts, that's when the tanks are going to roll. Folks, the United States National Guard, Marine Corps, etc., can be ordered to fire on you. And they have a choice: desert and be shot on sight, or swallow their humanity and kill you. In a nation that's supposed to be free, we haven't been free, truly free, for a long time. Our administrations put up with the idle chatter, but the minute anybody tries to make an actual move, they snuff out their lights. I mean, that's why my counsel is don't get out there and protest. Don't get out there and do that don't fight this, because it's leading to the day of the Lord. Your lives are expendable, Christian, because this is not your home. So rape and blowing up facilities, we've already got people shooting up schools. The burning down of a daycare center is nothing. We have fires and we have floods, and they will increase. People are bemoaning everything that's going on in North Carolina right now. And this time, it's not a hurricane. It's a tropical storm, but it was a weather system that came from the west and came sweeping across and inundated them and raised their river 20 feet in 45 minutes. That's only the beginning of this. Wait until this happens in the dead of winter with snow on the ground and there's a flash flood. Wait. people will die in the water in a matter of seconds. You think that the death toll of this last little flood that went on, and I say little, catastrophic. It's heartbreakingly so, but it's little. The death toll to this is paltry compared to what it will be in the future. Then go and take a look at the book of Revelation and understand Deuteronomy 28 has a cycle of curses that go in 40 verses. I think it's actually 7 cycles, with the last of it talking about you'll go mad by you will lose your mind by the things that you see. In 70 AD, that's what was going on in Jerusalem under siege. Christians were there, but not partaking. When Pompey's army moved out, every Christian that remembered the warning of Jesus left. They escaped. Statistics state that it's very highly likely that there were no Christians in Jerusalem when Pompey's armies returned and sacked the temple and burned Jerusalem down. Folks, we're in the night. Might does not make right. You are the children. You are the sheep. You are the servants. You have position. You have this. You have that. For God's sake, do as he tells you to. Compromise your will for his. Don't compromise his will for yours. You are still going to end up as collateral damage when he hits the scene. Look at the seals and trumpets as a series of 7s of Deuteronomy 28. See the pattern for what it is, because at each grouping, 7 seals, and there's a pause, and it's like response, and you read that there's a response from the hominids on the planet, and it's kind of like, meh, flip you, God, we don't want you, you're nasty, eh. So then he goes from seals to trumpets, so it's a lot worse now. At the end of that, you have a pause, so to speak. Of course, by chapter 14 at the last trump, we're gone. If you make it that far, you've been transformed. You lived for the transformation. If you were dead, you got the transformation anyway. It doesn't matter. You're all going to get the new body. Doesn't matter. He will wipe away the tears. He will heal the trauma. Trust me. I have a personal thing that I have had as a personal vision, and I don't know whether this is actually going to ever happen or not, because at the time my children were younger. My husband was alive. My husband is now passed. He died of stage 4 colon cancer. He lasted 6 years, and then he passed. We were in a place where my family was together, and suddenly the jackboots broke into our home without warning and started screaming. My husband came out of his office, my children came out of the bedroom, and were met with gunfire. I was just standing there, and I got around in my right shoulder, which shattered it, spun me around and slammed me to the ground, and I'm laying on the ground in a pool of blood. Now, I was awakened, and I was aided by angelic assistance. The one and only time I've really seen angels, except for when I was very young in the Lord. Used to see them all the time. But this angel helped me to treat my wound, bind and helped me dress my wound so I could carry my Alice pack. Yes, I have an Alice pack. So I could change clothes, put boots on, etc., put on my Alice pack, and get the flock out of Dodge. It was basically, I then had to go get into my computers, pull all my drives, and I think I took them with me because a computer drive is not that heavy anymore. So thumb drives and computer drives were put in my Alice pack. Doesn't really weigh it down much. And it was settled on me on a shattered shoulder. Thank you. And I went out the door, and I took my house key and threw it on the lawn after I locked my doors. And I took the rest of my keys, like car keys and stuff, I took them and I put them in my pocket, and I left. I had a walking stick, and that was it. I headed out. Now, in the vision, there were suits that came in and did this. Suits that came in after the jackboots came in and killed us, supposedly. And a suit comes in, and he's very upset because there where I was laying is this pool of blood stain, but I'm not there. And he gets on the walkie, and he says, "No, sir, she's gone." "I don't know, sir, but she's gone. She's gone." Which tells me that I'm the person they were looking for. Now, in this episode, I'm also going to state this. The concept of Goshen is also the concept of an underground church, a massive one. Go ask the Chinese. Go ask the Koreans. Go ask any place where Christianity is under repression and is flourishing. Signs and wonders of God, God healing, God keeping, love of God being poured out. These people rejoice. Why? Because they know they're a target. They're also scared to death. But when the body corporate comes together, they might not say a word, but their faces are wreathed in laughter, quiet laughter, silent laughter, tears of joy, because the presence just shows up there. And here in America, we're starving for that. It isn't until you hit the furnace of true, life-altering, you have nobody but God to lean upon, persecution and losses to His cause, that suddenly in your life that suffering takes on His attention and He is there. His comfort will be there. In Isaiah, it talks about to proclaim the day of the Lord, to comfort those who mourn in Zion, the garland for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the mantle or cloaking of praise for the spirit of fainting, heaviness, or grieving to death, grief, gravity, and the grave. That these might become the oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord. I have sat with these visions for decades. As I'm now looking at this new regime and watching what's happening on the world stage, I'm looking at what might possibly become the day of the Lord. It all starts for me with Seal 6, when the sunlight goes out, and my solar panels are destroyed by what comes down. I won't want to live here. I'll be in an ash cloud. Maybe, unless it's not in my area. Once again, GES, the Greek word for terra firma, can be anywhere or everywhere. So that's hard to read. And that's going to do it for this episode of This and That. So until then,